Hey guys, welcome to our first edition of Inspiring Greatness. I'm here with a very good friend of mine, Tony Amato. He's the head coach at University of Arizona right now for the women's soccer program. We started about 10 years ago here at Rollins College in Winter Park. That's where we are today. Tony, thanks for being on the show today.
Has it been 10 years?
Yeah, it has
Getting
been.
old.
Yeah, not as old as you. Excited to have him here. He's in town, so I figured he'd be a great person to start off our series. Looking for inspirational people in the field and people that have used strength conditioning or sports performance to enhance their programs, their careers, their futures, all that. And I really have a lot of respect for Tony, watching him kind of climb the ladder here. And so we're going to run through kind of his career and how he's used strength conditioning to hopefully better his career and his programs. And we'll start when him and I met at Rollins College. Tony's kind of responsible for, I guess, bringing myself and SSP into college athletics. We were introduced, had a meeting, and the next thing he knew, we were working together, and we worked, how long were you here for with me? 4 years, 5 years?
I think about 5.
About 5 years. We worked together here, and he's gone on since then. So, Tony, let's start at Rollins. Why, we're in a Division II school here. Strength conditioning is not a major part of the program. What made you reach out, bring in an outside person, and make this a big part of your program?
I would say the biggest thing has to do with, we talked before we turned the camera on about the culture and changing the culture and wanting to improve in that. But for me, the ultimate thing is that I felt like we needed to make it important so that we had an edge against our competition. So when you look at college soccer teams, so many things are similar. Even when I go out recruiting, I watch all these games when I'm in town, and I'm like, well, all these kids are pretty similar. How can we make a difference with them? And I felt that way here back at Rollins, like, okay, how can we get an advantage? Because all things considered, it's all about the same. So if we can get an edge, let's do that. And what's one way we can do that? I felt like strength and conditioning was a part of that. And so that's really how it all started. And then sitting down and talking with you and going through, okay, this is how we can make a difference from that standpoint. It was a no-brainer for me to implement that into my program.
Right. It's an interesting point. So that's 10 years ago. One of the things I used to say about this field, like trying to make this sell of strength conditioning, was if you want an edge, you have to do this, right? Like this, enroll yourself in a sports performance or strength conditioning program to get an edge. And I think today, my sell is if you want to compete, you have to do it, right? Like everybody's doing it, and you have to do it. And there's really, you go down to like the youth levels, and we say that at the youth level too. Like if you're going to compete, you better get involved in a program like that.
And I think that's where the biggest difference is now. When you go back even just 10 years ago, it wasn't necessarily the norm. And now you say do it because that is the norm and everyone does it. But clearly here, 10 years ago, that wasn't the norm.
Right.
And now it is the norm and all the teams do it, and the culture is completely different.
Sure.
And now a youth player or a college player, if they weren't doing that, you'd ask some serious questions like, wait, we've never lifted a weight, but you're not working with some sort of strength and conditioning, personnel. But, back then, I don't feel like that was the case at all, and that's where I thought, okay, we can really get an edge.
Right. And, the other thing you talked about was changing the culture. And we wanted to do this interview in the weight room today, but we couldn't. When you started, or when I started here with you, there was no weight room, and it was strictly about working with these girls and changing the culture. And there was no hang cleans, there was no Olympic lifts, there wasn't a bar to do that, there wasn't plates to do that, and so we really had to be creative on like changing the mindset and the work capacity and the work ethic of these girls, and that's something I think that you've probably carried on through the other programs that you've been in as well.
Yeah, no doubt that part of it, but when you said we didn't even have this stuff here, I remember it being mind-blowing when we got the racks out there. Like, wow, what a huge achievement.
Oh, yeah.
And how far we've come with that. But yeah, that mentality and that culture was something that we put in place here, and I've definitely carried that with me to the other two programs I've been at.
Yeah, and it's stayed here as well. That culture has changed here for the good, and I can say just because I'm still here, how much that set the tone for where we are 10 years later. Next thing I kind of want to touch on is, at the time you were also the director of coaching for the girls club here, soccer club, and at the same time you brought us into Rollins, you brought SSP into the club soccer scene on the youth level. It changed the culture of the college scene, but what else did it do, bring it into the youth level?
Well, once I saw the benefits in a college program and how that was really helping our college athletes, I felt like, well, if we're going to have a youth program and we're training those players to then play in college, and that's what we're doing in college and seeing good benefits, then let's go down to the youth level and put that in place.
Sure.
So that once they weren't all going to come to Rollins College, but so when they went wherever they were going to go, they had some of that under their belt and were prepared to do that and could be, the best athlete they could be at that point. So that was a big part of it, and also we wanted to separate ourselves from some of the other clubs in the area, because as you know, there's a lot of them, and what makes a difference? Well, we felt like that can make a difference as well.
Sure. And it's if you're in a big club, it's just about every club across the country now. It's some form of sports performance, speed, agility work. It's just become what you have to do, right?
Yeah, no doubt. It's the norm, and when I'm recruiting kids now at the highest level, it comes up in conversation, because we don't want them to just turn up before their, a few months before their freshman year in the summer session and never have done a squat or a clean before. So whenever we bring it up, there are a lot of players that are already doing it, which helps. And obviously it's at a different level and a different intensity, but they're doing it, and that helps get them ready for college.
Right. So you leave Rollins, you go to a Division I program, smaller Division I program, Stephen F. Austin, and you get there. What's the strength conditioning environment like there, and how did it kind of play into your program at a school like that, where it's kind of already established as part of the program?
Well, the biggest thing when I got there was that they had full-time strength and conditioning personnel in the athletic department. And so that was different for me. You were someone we brought in from your company to do it here, and it was already set up, established, working with all the teams there, and it went through one person in terms of directing that program. So that was the biggest difference. They already had some things in place that we just gave our input from our experience with you, and they took it and ran with it. So the biggest thing was that it was already in place, and because I had already used it in the past in my program, we could really hit the ground running with it. And they were really relieved that I had that background so that they could, have some freedom and get the players ready to go. And ultimately, I just told them, hey, you're one of our coaches. We want you to make sure they're fit, healthy, ready to go, and strong on the field. And we let them run with it. They did a great job with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's so important to have a good relationship with your strength coach, your athletic trainer, all those different support staff to what you do.
Yeah, and that's not always the case with teams and strength coaches, but I felt like my experience with you helped me when I went to another place to know how it should be done, how far you can take it, and I guess I was lucky when I got to SFA that the person who worked with our team had a similar philosophy with what I was used to. And that's been the case at Arizona as well. So if it was drastically different, I guess you could have some struggles there, but it's all pretty much in line with how I think things should go, and so it's been a real asset to our program.
Awesome. Okay, so now you've moved into the Pac-12, you're big time, you've made it. We'll touch quickly on the strength and conditioning part. What's been the biggest change in that department at such a big program?
Well, I would say that the biggest thing is that we have everything we need. There's not anything that we feel like, if we only had this piece of equipment, or if we could only do that. I'm fortunate because we have the director of what is considered the Olympic sports at Arizona works directly with our teams.
Awesome.
He has the resources and the experience to make sure our student athletes are prepared. So he's able to really move forward with that.
Right.
For me, there wasn't a huge difference in once I got there because he had been working with the team,
Okay.
and they knew, hey, you work for Jim, here's the culture of what he did.
Right.
And so there wasn't a whole lot of tweaking that had to be done in that area because he had worked with a lot of those athletes before.
Okay. What do you try to bring to your program now that's the difference maker that makes your program better? What are you reaching after now? What are you trying to integrate now?
I would say the biggest thing we've added recently was the polar heart rate monitor system,
Cool.
so that every one of our athletes wear it when they train with our strength coach, when they practice in games. We get a reading of what their workload is for the week. They self-report some things to us, and it leaves the guessing game of, hey, I was planning a hard session with them, whether it's strength and conditioning or my session. We actually know, did they work hard or not?
Gotcha.
Was it the intensity we said it was going to be? Because you know what it's like. Sometimes you go, this is going to be a light session, and the players are smoked after it, or at least they're saying they are. So that system, and it, obviously, if you're familiar with it, it does a lot of different things, but that's just one area where we go, okay, it takes the guesswork out of it.
Sure.
And it makes it a little more individual for each person in terms of where their fitness level is and where they need to get to. We found that some players who we would consider really fit, they have a lot more that they could give, and that we should be training them at a higher level.
Sure.
Whereas some of the other ones, it's right in the zone where they should be, and some of the other ones, we maybe need to back off of a little bit because they're not quite at that level. So that's probably been the biggest thing that we feel like, okay, that's next level stuff for our strength and conditioning program that can make a difference.
Yeah, I love it. We're looking at it here as well. Okay, last thing I want to touch on is the testing component. And this is something that I'm sure Tony still has his testing results from when we tested here, and all the different programs he's been a part of, we still touch base yearly about testing and what his players have done and where they are and how they improved. And this is something I even talk to coaches about here is, I've got coaches that scholarship kids, they cut kids, they encourage kids by testing. And so just talk a little bit about why testing is an important part of your program and how you hold your players accountable with it.
Well, I once heard that players will only do what you measure. So it was a big thing that I thought, okay, well, we need to be able to give them some numbers so that they can see where they're at and how we can make it better, or that they're already getting better from month to month or even semester to semester or year to year with it. Especially when we first started here, so that they could see, hey, it is working.
Right.
If you have any question of why we're doing this, here are the numbers to show you why.
Right.
And I've always found that that's the number one thing in coaching, is that you have to give the players the why.
Sure.
And once you have the hard numbers, some it motivates, like, okay, I'm not there and I want to get there. Some see the numbers of, the team average or the team best and go, hey, I want to aspire to get there. And then obviously there's the other side of it when someone's necessarily not getting it done. You have some factual information to help with that. So I feel like the more you can test, the better. And obviously the strength and conditioning part is just one component in the soccer world. It's not just, hey, you're going to make the team or be cut from the team because of these numbers. But it's a piece of the puzzle that we use to evaluate our players. And it ends up being a good piece for them from that physical side of things.
Sure. Yeah, I guess from my side on the testing, one of the reasons we use it as well is just to evaluate our program. We've kind of experimented with testing, picking 3 tests and testing them all semester long in the off season. And then we can tie that into in-season program. And so it just gives us, as the strength conditioning coach, feedback on what's working better with our program, with a male or a female, or this sport versus that sport. So testing just has so much value.
And that's something that, that piece that you just talked about is something I really took from working with you, is that it's, sometimes, especially the players, and some coaches look at testing as just being, hey, we're going to test the beat test or this push-up test or this squat test, or whatever, to punish the players, really put some pain into them.
Right.
And what I've took from what you just said and working with you before is it's not that at all. It's, hey, is our program working? Are we making these players better? And I've been fortunate with our strength coach at Arizona now. He'll say, hey, I want to test them. Like, he brings up the testing. Like, hey, I want to test them to see where we're at. Hey, I want to see if they're coming along how I think they should be.
Right.
And that to me goes a long way. It's not, hey, we're going to run them so that they feel the pain of that physical test.
Right.
He's really trying to measure where they're at. Can we push them more? Is the program working? Does it need to be adjusted? And use that information for the future. So that's a big piece that I think can go a long way.
Yeah, we've gone back and forth on the testing over the years, but we love it. We continue to use it. It's great feedback for our coaches. All right, so that's it. First edition of Inspiring Greatness. Thank you, Tony, for being on the show. Stay tuned for our next episode. Thanks a lot.